Anxiety is not a new enemy. We often believe that the stress and worry we experience are products of our modern world, of endless notifications, deadlines, bills, and the invisible pressure to keep up. But if you travel back 2,000 years, you would find men and women facing the same inner storms. The Romans worried about survival, about reputation, about wealth, about the uncertainty of tomorrow. What makes Stoicism so powerful is that it does not pretend the world is calm. It teaches us to remain calm while the world is chaotic. The Stoics knew that we do not control the waves of life, but we can learn to steer our ship through them. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he was not writing for an audience or for fame. He was writing to himself to tame his restless mind. Here was the most powerful man in the world, leading an empire, yet he still felt the grip of anxiety and doubt. In one passage, he reminded himself, "If you are troubled by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." This single idea is one of the strongest weapons against anxiety. The modern mind, trained by psychology, knows that thoughts are the bridge between the outside world and our feelings. Change the thought, and the feeling begins to change as well. What Marcus realized through philosophy, modern therapists have rediscovered through cognitive behavioral therapy. Anxiety begins with a belief that something bad will happen, that we will lose control, or that we cannot bear what the future holds. The Stoics approach this not by denying fear, but by questioning it. Epictetus, once a slave, later a great teacher, said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." Think about this. A thunderstorm is only a storm, yet one person trembles with fear, while another finds it beautiful. The event is the same, the interpretation is different. And if anxiety is born from interpretation, then we can train ourselves to interpret differently. The practice the Stoics used was called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Instead of running from fear, they faced it in their imagination. A Stoic would wake and think, "Today I might lose money. Today I might be insulted. Today I might face pain." To modern ears, this sounds pessimistic, but it was not. By imagining what could happen, they stripped fear of its surprise. If it came, they were ready. If it did not, they were grateful. Imagine how this practice helps with anxiety. Instead of being shocked by hardship, you prepare for it calmly. The mind says, "I have already seen this. I know it is survivable." Anxiety thrives on the unknown. Preparation robs it of power. Seneca offered another insight when he said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How many nights have been lost not to real disasters, but to the shadows of disasters in our thoughts? We replay conversations that never happened. We fear outcomes that never arrive. We live tomorrow's pain today. The Stoic response was not to stop thinking, but to notice when thinking turns into torment. When the mind races, ask, "Is this happening now? If not, then let me live in the moment I actually inhabit, not in the 1,000 imagined ones." Modern psychology echoes this. Mindfulness, a practice now popular in therapy, tells us to bring attention back to the present. What is real, here and now? My breath, my heartbeat, the ground under my feet. The Stoics practiced their own mindfulness. Marcus reminded himself daily, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. Far from depressing, this thought was meant to bring clarity. Why waste life on fears of the future when the present is already slipping away? But Stoicism was not only about the individual mind, it was also about community. Anxiety often grows because we feel alone in our struggle. The Stoics believed that we are all part of a larger whole, that to be human is to share in reason with others. They saw humanity as one body where each of us is a part. To remind yourself of this when anxious is to remember that you are not broken, not strange, not weak. You are human. Anxiety is part of the human condition, but so is courage. Every person you admire has faced it, and so will you. Now let us bring this wisdom into a modern example. Imagine you have a job interview tomorrow. Your chest is tight, your thoughts race, you can barely sleep. The anxious mind says, "What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself?" A Stoic approach would begin by asking, "What is in my control?" You cannot control the interviewer's mood or the decision or the other candidates, but you can control your preparation, your effort, your honesty. Anxiety arises when you try to control what is not yours. Once you divide the world into two parts, what is yours and what is not, you reclaim your peace. You say, "I will focus on the part that is mine, and I will release the rest." In this release, the storm inside begins to quiet. Another tool is the reminder of impermanence. Every anxious thought whispers that this feeling will last forever, but the Stoics constantly meditated on change. Nothing stays. Joy passes, pain passes, fear passes. Anxiety too will pass. When it rises, remember that it is only a wave, not the ocean. It comes and it goes. Marcus wrote, "Time is like a river, and its events are the things swept along in its current." Your anxiety is just one drop in this river. Let it flow, and it will not drown you. Part of overcoming anxiety, the Stoics teach, is to realign our values. Much of our worry comes from placing too much importance on things that are outside our control: wealth, status, the opinions of strangers. If you fear losing them, you will never be at rest. But if you value virtue, honesty, courage, kindness, then your peace is untouchable, because no one can take virtue from you. The anxious person is like a guard standing at a door that has 1,000 keys. The Stoic is like a guard standing at a door with only one key: their own mind. The timeless wisdom of Stoicism does not promise a life free of anxiety, but it offers a way to live with it. It gives us tools to shrink fear, to face it, to see it as part of being human. In the end, the Stoic does not say, "I will never feel anxious." The Stoic says, "When anxiety comes, I will meet it with reason, with preparation, with courage." And perhaps that is the most liberating truth, that anxiety need not own us. We can learn to carry it lightly as those before us did, and in that carrying, we discover strength we did not know we had. Anxiety is not solved by words alone. It requires practice. The Stoics were not armchair philosophers. They were practitioners. Their philosophy was not meant to sit in books, but to be tested in life, in moments of fear and uncertainty. So if you want to see how timeless wisdom can help with modern anxiety, it is not enough to understand the ideas. You must practice them day by day until they become part of you. The good news is that these practices are simple and they require no special tools, only your attention and willingness to train the mind. The first practice is the art of distinguishing between what you can control and what you cannot. Epictetus began his handbook with this single truth: some things are up to us, and some are not. Most anxiety is born from forgetting this. We worry about whether people will like us, whether events will go as planned, whether tomorrow will unfold in our favor. But none of this belongs to us. What belongs to us is how we speak, how we act, how we prepare. Whenever you feel anxiety rising, pause and ask, what in this situation is mine and what is not mine? Then commit your energy only to the part that is yours. This does not remove all fear, but it cuts fear in half. You no longer fight the entire universe, you only guide yourself. Another practical exercise is the premeditation of difficulties. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum. This is not about being negative, but about preparing the mind. Suppose you are anxious about a trip. Instead of telling yourself, "Nothing will go wrong," imagine calmly that the train may be delayed, that the weather may be poor, that you may lose a small item. Then tell yourself, "Even if this happens, I can endure it." When you rehearse challenges in advance, Their sting lessens when they come. This practice does not make life darker, it makes you stronger. And when reality is kinder than your imagination, gratitude replaces worry. One of the simplest but most powerful Stoic tools is voluntary discomfort. We live in a world where comfort is constant, but this makes us fragile. Seneca advised his students, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest fare and with coarse and rough clothing, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" Why would he recommend such a thing? Because anxiety is often the fear of losing comfort, of losing security. By practicing discomfort on your own terms, fasting for a day, taking a cold shower, living simply, you prove to yourself that you can endure far more than you think. Anxiety whispers, "You cannot survive if you lose what you have." Voluntary discomfort answers, "Yes, I can." I already have modern psychology echoes this in exposure therapy. When you gradually face what you fear, your brain learns that it is not as dangerous as it once believed. The Stoics discovered this long before. If you deliberately step into small difficulties, big difficulties lose their power. The anxious mind shrinks in the face of proven resilience. Gratitude is another weapon against anxiety, though many forget it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Anxiety thrives when we focus only on what could go wrong. Gratitude shifts our gaze to what is already right. This is not blind optimism, it is balance. If the anxious mind invents problems, gratitude invents perspective. Try this when you feel restless. List 3 things you have right now that once you wished for, or that others might envy. Anxiety loosens when gratitude tightens. Another Stoic practice is perspective taking. They love to zoom out and see life from above. Marcus often reminded himself how small human troubles look when compared to the vastness of the cosmos. Think of your anxious thought, perhaps about a failed meeting, a harsh word, an uncertain future. Now imagine the Earth itself, spinning silently through the galaxy, with millions of lives, millions of stories, each carrying its own troubles. How large does your anxiety look now? This is not meant to dismiss your struggle, but to remind you that the universe is bigger than your fear. By shrinking the size of your worries in the cosmic picture, the heart finds space to breathe. Even in the heat of anxiety, the Stoics relied on breathing. While they did not describe it in the language of modern science, they knew that the body and mind are linked. Today, psychology confirms that slow, steady breathing calms the nervous system. So when Marcus reminded himself to return to the present moment, he was doing what we now call grounding. The next time anxiety strikes, take 3 deep breaths, each longer than the last. With each breath, tell yourself, "I am here, now. The future has not arrived. I can meet this moment." It sounds simple, but simplicity is often the highest wisdom. Finally, the Stoics believed in writing as medicine. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily, not for others, but for himself, to capture his restless thoughts and discipline them into clarity. Anxiety often grows when thoughts stay tangled in the mind. By writing them down, you make them visible, and what is visible can be questioned. Write what you fear, then ask, "Is this in my control? Is it certain? Can I survive it?" This small practice can empty a storm from the mind onto a page. The ancients used wax tablets, we use notebooks. The tool has changed, but the power remains. Through these exercises, control versus non-control, premeditation, voluntary discomfort, gratitude, perspective, breathing, and writing, the Stoics turned anxiety into a teacher rather than a tyrant. Each practice chips away at the weight of fear until what remains is something you can carry. Anxiety may never vanish completely, but it can be mastered, shaped, and transformed into strength. And this brings us to the heart of Stoicism. Anxiety is not a punishment, but an opportunity. It is a chance to practice courage, to test your reason, to grow resilience. The anxious moment is the training ground for the Stoic mind. When you feel the rush of worry, instead of saying, "Why me?" you say, "Here is my chance to practice." This shift alone can turn panic into purpose. Anxiety is not only felt in quiet rooms or sleepless nights, it shows itself in the everyday scenes of modern life. It hides in the nervous glance before opening an email, in the tension before speaking up in a meeting, in the silence of waiting for someone's reply, in the restless scrolling through endless screens. The Stoics never lived with smartphones or online profiles, but they lived with the same human mind. And so their wisdom, stripped of time and place, still speaks directly to these moments. Take the workplace. Perhaps you are under pressure, with deadlines looming and a constant fear that you may fail or fall short. The anxious mind says, "If I make a mistake, I will lose everything." But the Stoic response would be, what truly belongs to you here? Is it the outcome, or is it the effort? Epictetus would remind you that no boss, no co-worker, no market can take from you the honesty of your work or the courage to face difficulty. If you can hold fast to virtue, doing your task with clarity and discipline, then you have already succeeded. The outcome may rise or fall, but the peace of having done what was in your control cannot be stolen. Consider relationships. Much of modern anxiety is tied to what others think of us, whether we are liked, admired, respected, loved. Social media magnifies this, placing our image in front of countless eyes and inviting comparison at every turn. The Stoics knew this temptation well, even in their time. Seneca wrote, "We are always in the process of becoming, and it is dangerous to be judged by those who do not know our full story." The anxious mind wants approval from the crowd. The Stoic mind seeks approval from itself. Imagine the relief if you lived not by the shifting opinions of strangers, but by your own steady values. To conquer anxiety here is to remind yourself daily, their opinion is theirs. My character is mine. Think also of health, another source of deep anxiety. The fear of illness, of aging, of decline, these shadows follow us closely. Marcus Aurelius, himself often ill, did not deny the fear, but he refused to be ruled by it. He wrote, "Do not look around at the darkness, but at what you can still do with the light you have." Modern psychology agrees. Those who focus on what they can do in the present moment, even when unwell, experience less anxiety and greater strength. The body may weaken, but the mind can still remain free. Anxiety loses its sharpest edge when we shift from "what if I lose everything" to "what can I still create, still give, still live, here and now." Even in the smallest moments, like being stuck in traffic or standing in a long line, the Stoics found room for practice. Anxiety grows in impatience, in the wish that reality would bend to our schedule. But Marcus reminded himself, "You always have the option of having no opinion about this. To let go of the judgment, 'This is unbearable,' and instead to say, 'This is simply time passing, and I am alive within it.'" How many anxious thoughts would dissolve if we could strip away the story we attach to them? Modern science confirms this again and again. Studies show that reframing, gratitude, exposure, and mindful presence all reduce anxiety. But the Stoics discovered these methods long before laboratories could measure them. They understood the human mind as both fragile and strong, easily disturbed, yet capable of immense resilience. The key was not to deny anxiety, but to meet it with practice, every day, in every situation. Imagine then what your life could look like if you began to live this way. The next time anxiety rises before an exam, an interview, a performance, you remind yourself, "The outcome is not mine. My preparation and effort are mine." The next time you feel restless at night, haunted by what-ifs, you remember Seneca's warning that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The next time you fear losing comfort, you recall the days you practiced living simply and found that you survived just fine. Each anxious moment becomes not an enemy, but a chance to practice. Over time, something changes. Anxiety does not vanish. It never truly vanishes. But it no longer dominates. It visits, and you greet it with calm. It speaks, and you answer with reason. It grows, and you remind yourself that even this will pass. This is the Stoic art of living, not the absence of storms, but the skill of sailing through them. And so we come to the end of this guide, but really it is only a beginning. The Stoics handed down tools that remain sharper than ever, and psychology confirms what they already knew, that our minds can be trained, our fears can be softened, and our lives can be steadier than we imagine. Anxiety will knock at your door again. When it does, remember, you do not have to open in panic. You can open in strength. If this journey through Stoic wisdom has given you even a spark of clarity, then stay with us here in the Wisdom Lab. There is much more to explore, on the mind, on human nature, on living with courage and peace. Subscribe and be part of this community of thinkers and seekers. The world outside may remain noisy, but together we can learn the art of quieting the mind.